Michael Jordan, the basketball legend. If you want to know the entire trajectory of the greatest player of all time, this video is for you. From his childhood through his high school cut, his early years in the NBA, his epic clashes against the bad boys Detroit Pistons, his 6 NBA titles, his unexpected retirement, his attempt at baseball, until his iconic comeback with the phrase, "I'm back," and his last dance with the Chicago Bulls. The birth of a legend, 1963. Imagine a world without Michael Jordan. Without his impossible shots, without his gravity-defying dunks, without his story of overcoming obstacles that inspired millions. Hard right? But it all started on a cold February day in Brooklyn, New York. It was February 17, 1963, the day fate brought into the world the man who would change basketball forever. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was born as an ordinary baby, with no clue of what the future held for him. But there was something different about him from an early age. A fire and uncontrollable desire to win. His parents, James and Dolores, were neither millionaires nor famous, but they always taught him the importance of hard work and discipline. Shortly after, the Jordan family left the hustle and bustle of New York to live in Wilmington, North Carolina, a quieter place, perfect for raising their children. It was there that Michael grew up, surrounded by the affection of his family and the intense competition between his brothers. And believe me, at home no one took it easy on him. Jordan had 4 siblings: Larry, James Jr., Dolores and Roslyn. The oldest brother, Larry, was short but played basketball like a giant. And he was the one who challenged Michael all the time, not letting the youngest win a single game. "If you want to win, you're going to have to earn it," Larry would say. Since he was little, Michael hated losing. Whether it was in a card game, a game of tag, or a simple throwdown in the backyard, he always wanted to be the best. What if he lost? He wouldn't accept it, he would get angry, he would practice more, and then he would come back to try again. It was as if he had been born with a secret code inside him. Never give up. But here's a secret. Michael Jordan wasn't born the best. He became the best. And this story was just beginning. If you think you've seen it all, just wait until you find out what happened when he tried out for the high school team. The varsity cut, 1978-79. Now imagine this. One of the greatest players of all time, being rejected from the high school team. It seems incredible, right? But that's exactly what happened to Michael Jordan. In 1978, at the age of 15, he was a student at Laney High School in North Carolina. He loved basketball and dreamed of playing for the school's varsity team. But there was one problem: he wasn't tall enough. At the time, Michael was about 5 feet 9 inches tall, while most of the players drafted were already over 6 feet 1 inch. When the list of those who passed came out, Jordan anxiously searched for his name, but couldn't find it. He had been cut. "What do you mean? I'm good. I'm fast. I'm talented," he thought, tears streaming down his face. The cut was a brutal shock. Jordan ran home, locked himself in his room and cried all day. But something inside him said, "This will never happen again." Instead of giving up, he used this rejection as fuel. While the others rested, Michael spent hours training alone. He would make non-stop shots, dribble past imaginary opponents and run until he was exhausted. He wanted to prove that he was capable. He wanted to come back the following year and be impossible to ignore. And that's exactly what he did. Jordan grew a few inches and came back much better. When the new season arrived, there was no longer any doubt. He was the best player in the school. What seemed like a failure was actually the push he needed. Had he been accepted as a freshman, he might not have developed the fierce mentality that would make him a legend. And that was just the first big lesson in his life. Sometimes rejection is what makes us stronger. If you think that story is impressive, wait until you see what happened when he arrived at the University of North Carolina. The explosion at the University of North Carolina, 1981-84. Now picture this. Young Michael Jordan, full of talent and determination but still unknown to the world. He had overcome rejection in high school, trained like crazy and became one of the best players in high school. But now came the next challenge: college. In 1981, Michael received an offer to play for the University of North Carolina, UNC, one of the best teams in college basketball. The coach? Dean Smith, a legend of the sport. But Jordan wasn't the star of the team yet. He was just a freshman, a kid among more experienced players. But MJ didn't want to be just another guy. He wanted to be the best. At practice, he was the first one to arrive and the last one to leave. He studied the veterans' moves and absorbed everything the coach taught him. And then, in 1982, something magical happened. The shot that changed everything. NCAA Finals, 1982. The 1982 College Championship Final pitted UNC against Georgetown, which had none other than Patrick Ewing, one of the most dominant centers in history. It was a tense game fought point for point. And in the final seconds, the score was 62-61 for Georgetown. It was North Carolina's last possession. The ball went round and round, until it reached Jordan's hands. He was free. With the coolness of a veteran, he stepped up to shoot from the dead zone, and the ball fell clean into the basket. North Carolina 63-62 Georgetown. The title was theirs. The gym exploded, the crowd went wild, and Jordan, the previously unknown rookie, became the championship hero. It was there, on that night of March 29, 1982, that the basketball world met Michael Jordan. It was with that shot that he discovered the power of self-belief. After that, he was never the same. Over the next 2 years, Jordan continued to improve, winning awards and proving that he was different. He didn't just play well, he dominated the game. And the NBA was starting to take notice. Then in 1984 came the big moment, the NBA draft. Michael Jordan was ready for the next level. But was the NBA ready for him? If you think you've seen it all, just wait until you hear how he ended up with the Chicago Bulls. And why he wasn't the first pick. The NBA draft, 1984. The beginning of a new era. Now imagine a 21-year-old full of energy, confidence and talent, ready to conquer the world. That was Michael Jordan in 1984. After 3 brilliant years at the University of North Carolina, where he proved himself to be a special player, he was ready for the next step. The NBA, the biggest stage in world basketball. That year, Jordan decided to enter the NBA draft, the event where teams choose the best college talents. Everyone knew he was incredible, but would he be the first pick? The draft surprise. On June 19, 1984 at Madison Square Garden, the teams made their picks. The first to select was the Houston Rockets, and they decided to choose Hakeem Olajuwon, a giant and dominant center. So far so good. He was a rare talent. The second pick was the Portland Trail Blazers. And here comes the moment that changed the history of the NBA. The team needed a big man and opted for Sam Bowie, a promising center who had a history of injuries. And so the third pick went to the Chicago Bulls. It was their chance to draft Michael Jordan. Without hesitation, Commissioner David Stern announced into the microphone. With the third pick in the 1984 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls select Michael Jordan from the University of North Carolina. And that's when it all began. Jordan grabbed his suit, walked up to the stage and shook the commissioner's hand. At that moment, he didn't know he was about to transform the Chicago Bulls from a no-name team into a dynasty. What did they say about him? Believe it or not, not everyone thought Jordan would be a star. The general manager of the Portland Trail Blazers justified his selection by saying, "We don't need a point guard or a small forward. We already have Clyde Drexler. We need a center." Even Bobby Knight, the coach of the U.S. national team, tried to convince the Blazers. "Take Jordan. He can play any position." But the team wouldn't listen. And it was the biggest mistake in the history of the draft. Jordan fell into Chicago's arms. And the Bulls, who had never been great, had just received the greatest gift in their history. But there was still one question in the air. Could he dominate the NBA like he did in college? If you think this story is epic, wait until you see what he did in his first year in the league. NBA debut and Rookie of the Year award, 1984-85. Now imagine this. A young man of just 21 years old, full of explosiveness, talent and confidence, entering the biggest basketball league in the world. But no one knew yet the impact he would make. When Michael Jordan arrived at the Chicago Bulls, the team was nothing impressive. They had no titles, were not favorites and could barely fill the gym at games. But everything was about to change. From the first practices, Jordan showed that he was different. He was fast, agile, strong and had a fierce mentality. While other rookies took time to adapt to the NBA, he entered the league as if he already belonged there. First season in the NBA, 1984-85. Jordan's debut took place on October 26, 1984, against the Washington Bullets. The gym was packed and everyone wanted to see what this kid from North Carolina could do. And he didn't disappoint. He scored 16 points, grabbed 6 rebounds and dished out 7 assists. But that was just the beginning. Jordan kept impressing more and more with each game. He fearlessly attacked the basket, made incredible plays and wowed the fans. Tickets for Chicago Bulls games started selling out. Suddenly, the team that no one cared about was now guaranteed a show on the court. And the numbers spoke for themselves. By the end of the season, Jordan was averaging 28.2 points, 6.5 rebounds and 5.9 assists per game. That was incredible for a rookie. He was unanimously voted Rookie of the Year. The iconic moment against the Milwaukee Bucks. One of the most memorable moments of that season was when the Bulls faced the Milwaukee Bucks, one of the best teams at the time. In the fourth quarter, Jordan took over the game, dribbling past defenders, scoring incredible points and leading Chicago to victory. The public already knew. They were watching the birth of a star. Larry Bird. About Jordan. Veterans around the league began to realize that this kid was no ordinary kid. Boston Celtics legend Larry Bird watched Jordan play and said, "I've seen a lot of talented players, but this guy is different. He's going to take over the league in no time." And Bird was right. Jordan wasn't just another good player. He was a phenomenon. But like all great stories, it wasn't all about winning. The next season would bring one of the biggest challenges of his career, an injury that could have changed everything. If you think this journey is already incredible, wait until you find out what happened when Jordan broke his foot and had to fight his way back onto the court. The devastating injury and the triumphant return, 1985 to 86. Now picture this. Michael Jordan was flying high, conquering the NBA, wowing fans and scaring opponents. He had just won the Rookie of the Year award and had become the great hope of the Chicago Bulls. But then the unexpected happened. It was the beginning of the 1985 to 86 season, and Jordan wanted to take the Bulls even further. But in a game against the Golden State Warriors, one moment changed everything. The injury that scared the world. Jordan went up for a layup as he had done thousands of times, but when he landed, something went wrong. He felt intense pain in his left foot. He was taken off the court immediately, and the tests revealed the worst: a fractured bone in his foot. The doctor said he would need to be out for at least 6 months. For an explosive player like him, this was a nightmare. And here comes the most important detail. The Chicago Bulls didn't want him back so soon. The team was afraid he would get hurt even more. In addition, many within the franchise thought it would be better to miss that season in order to get a high pick in the next draft. But Jordan was no ordinary player. He wouldn't accept being out. The fastest recovery in history. While the team wanted him to rest, Jordan began training in secret. He would go to the University of North Carolina court and play without the Bulls knowing. He wanted to prove that he was ready to return. When the management realized this, they were furious. But Jordan insisted, "Let me play." After much pressure, the Bulls allowed him to return, but with a minutes restriction. He could only play 7 minutes per quarter. For someone as competitive as he was, this was torture. But then came the 1986 playoffs. And it was during this phase that Jordan showed the world that he was no ordinary player. 63 points against the Boston Celtics, the game that defined his legend. The Chicago Bulls faced an almost impossible opponent, the Boston Celtics, led by Larry Bird. They were a historic team full of stars and favorites to win the title. But Jordan was not intimidated. In Game 2 of the series at the legendary Boston Garden, he did something that no one expected. He scored 63 points in a single game. That had never been done before in a playoff game. Larry Bird himself, one of the greatest in history, looked at Jordan and said the phrase that would remain forever in his memory. "I think I saw God disguised as Michael Jordan today." Despite this incredible performance, the Bulls lost the series. But one thing was clear to everyone: Jordan was different. He didn't just come back from injury, he came back stronger. Now, he didn't just want to play well. He wanted to win. But to do that, he had to overcome a new challenge: the bad boys of the Detroit Pistons. If you think Jordan had already been through it all, wait until you see how he dealt with the most brutal opponents the NBA has ever seen. The duel against the bad boys of the Detroit Pistons, 1987 to 1990. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan was already a monster in the NBA, scoring points like no one else, flying over opponents and leaving fans open-mouthed. But despite all this, he still didn't have a championship ring. And there was a reason for that: the Detroit Pistons. The late 1980s were cruel to Jordan. Every time he got close to the NBA Finals, the Pistons were there to stop him. They were a strong, experienced and above all violent team. This team had legends like Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Dennis Rodman and Bill Laimbeer. They didn't just want to beat Jordan, they wanted to destroy him. The Jordan rules. The tactic to stop the best in the world. The Pistons knew they couldn't stop Jordan playing clean basketball. So they created a special strategy called the Jordan rules. And what were these rules? It was simple. Every time Jordan got into the paint, someone had to take him down. If he tried to drive, a hard foul. If he tried to shoot, a shove. If he tried to dribble, 2 players would surround him. Referees didn't call as many fouls back then as they do today, so Jordan would get fouled the entire game. He'd get up, try again, and get fouled again. The Pistons were brutal. And the worst part? It worked. In 1988, the Bulls faced the Pistons in the Eastern Conference semifinals and lost 4-1. In 1989, they met in the Eastern Conference Finals and the Pistons won 4-2. In 1990 it was even more painful. The Bulls took the series to Game 7 and lost. Jordan walked off the court devastated. He felt like he was playing alone. His talent was absurd, but basketball was a team game. If the Bulls were going to win, they would have to change the plan to overcome the Pistons. After the 1990 loss, Jordan made a radical decision. He realized that just being skilled wasn't enough. He needed to be stronger, tougher, and more badass than ever before. So in the summer of 1990, Jordan hit the gym and worked out like a lunatic. He started lifting weights, something he had never done intensely before. His body got stronger, more robust. He wasn't going to be taken down so easily anymore. But it wasn't just him. The entire Bulls team started training hard. Coach Phil Jackson, who had taken over the team, helped too. He introduced the triangle offense, a new strategy that would make Chicago's game more collective, taking the pressure off Jordan and getting everyone more involved. Now Jordan was no longer just an incredible player. He was a leader. The next season would be different. He and the Bulls were ready to end the Pistons' dominance. And this time they wouldn't accept any other ending. If you think this rivalry was intense enough, wait until you see what happened in the 1991 rematch. When Jordan finally destroyed the Bad Boys. The first NBA title, 1991. The victory over the Pistons and the birth of a king. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan trained like never before. His body was stronger, his game was more mature, and his mentality was fiercer than any other player in the league. He would not accept losing anymore. He would not let the Pistons get him down anymore. The 1990-91 season began and the Bulls came out swinging. They won 61 games in the regular season, the best record in franchise history up to that point. The team was more united and Jordan was more determined than ever. Then came the long-awaited moment. The Eastern Conference Finals against the Detroit Pistons. The great rematch against the Pistons. The Bad Boys, who had eliminated Jordan 3 years in a row, were confident. They thought they could do the same old thing. Beat, taunt, and intimidate. But this time Jordan and the Bulls were ready. Unlike in previous years, he was not playing alone. The entire team was focused. Scottie Pippen shadow-marked Isaiah Thomas. Horace Grant dominated the paint and the Bulls' defense was suffocating. Result: Chicago Bulls 4-0 Detroit Pistons. Yes, a sweep. The Pistons, who have always played dirty, did not accept losing with their heads held high. In the final seconds of the last game, they walked off the court before the final whistle without even greeting Jordan and the Bulls. It was an act of pure arrogance. But Jordan didn't care. He didn't want respect from the Pistons. He wanted an NBA title. And now there was just one more obstacle. The NBA Finals against Magic Johnson's Los Angeles Lakers. The NBA Finals against Magic Johnson and the Lakers. The whole world was watching. On one side, Magic Johnson, one of the greatest players in history and owner of 5 championship rings. On the other, Michael Jordan, the new phenomenon seeking his first title. In Game 1, the Lakers surprised and won, leaving questions in the air. Could Jordan handle the pressure? But in Game 2 he gave a response that went down in history. The legendary switch hand layup. In the middle of the game, Jordan went for the basket, jumped to dunk with his right hand, but in the air he switched the ball to his left hand and scored on a platter. It was an unbelievable play. The commentator could only shout, "Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan." That was a symbol of what was to come. Jordan dominated the series and the Bulls won 4 games in a row. On June 12, 1991, after winning Game 5, Michael Jordan won his first NBA title. When the game was over, he couldn't contain his emotions. Sitting in the locker room hugging the trophy, he cried like a child. Years of defeats. Years of being beaten by the Pistons. Years of frustration. Now he was an NBA champion. And believe me, this was just the first crown in an empire he was about to build. If you think this victory was big, wait until you see what Jordan did in the following years. Because he wasn't going to stop there. The three-time championship and the consecration, 1991 to 1993. The rise of a king. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan was no longer just a promising youngster. He was no longer just a spectacular player. Now he was a champion. But for him, one title was not enough. He wanted more. Much more. After winning his first NBA ring in 1991, Jordan realized something. He was the best in the world and no one could doubt it anymore. But what separates the greats from the immortals? The ability to repeat success. So he returned for the 1991-92 season with a new goal. To win it all again. 1991-92 season. The second title. The Bulls were dominant in the regular season, winning 67 games. Jordan was playing better than ever, and the entire team had absorbed his winning mentality. In the 1992 playoffs, Chicago faced and defeated the Miami Heat, New York Knicks and Cleveland Cavaliers before reaching the NBA Finals against Clyde Drexler's Portland Trail Blazers. And here comes the incredible part. Many people compared Drexler to Jordan, saying that the two were on the same level. Fatal mistake. In Game 1 of the Finals, Jordan wanted to make it clear that there was no comparison. In the first half, he hit 6 three-pointers in a row. After the sixth shot, he shrugged his shoulders, looking at the fans and the bench as if to say, "I don't even know how I'm doing this." This moment became known as the iconic "the shrug." Jordan and the Bulls won the series 4-2, claiming their second championship. But of course he still wasn't satisfied. The 1992 Olympic Games, the Dream Team. That same year, Jordan had another great moment in his career. He was one of the leaders of the legendary Dream Team, the best basketball team ever formed at the Barcelona Olympic Games. Along with Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone and other stars, Jordan helped the USA win the Olympic gold undefeated. The whole world saw what was already clear. Michael Jordan was the biggest name in world basketball. But the journey was not over yet. 1992-93 season. The third title and the duel against Charles Barkley. If the second title was already a consecration, the third was to become immortal. In the 1992-93 season, Jordan maintained his absurd level, but this time the Bulls did not dominate as much in the regular season. Even so, in the playoffs, Jordan raised his game again. After beating the Cavaliers and the Knicks, Chicago reached the NBA Finals against Charles Barkley's Phoenix Suns, who had been named the season's MVP. And Jordan, as always, took it personally. In the 6 games of the series, he averaged 41 points per game, something unbelievable to this day. In Game 6, with the Bulls needing one last attack to win the title, Jordan passed the ball to John Paxson, who hit the decisive basket. Chicago Bulls 4-2 Phoenix Suns. The first three-peat, 3 consecutive championship. When the clock hit 0, the Bulls had just become 3-time NBA champions. Michael Jordan was now on par with the greatest of all time. He had dominated the league for 3 straight years, something few teams had done before. But just when everything seemed perfect, an unexpected event would shake his life forever. If you think Jordan had already been through it all, wait until you see the tragedy that made him give up basketball for the first time. The death of his father and his first retirement, 1993-1994. The hardest moment in Jordan's life. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan was on top of the world. 3 consecutive titles, a living legend status and millions of fans all over the world. He was the king of the NBA, untouchable on the court. But off the court he was just a son who idolized his father. The unbreakable bond between Jordan and his father. Since he was little, James Jordan was more than just a father to Michael. He was his best friend, his mentor, his inspiration. It was James who taught Michael to compete, to never give up and to strive for greatness. He was there for every important moment in his son's career. After winning his 3rd championship, Jordan wanted to take a break from basketball. So he and his father decided to travel together, enjoying some quality time away from the courts. But it was during this time that tragedy struck. The murder of James Jordan. On July 23, 1993, James Jordan was returning from a trip and decided to stop at a rest stop on the road in North Carolina. He parked his car and took a nap. But that night, two criminals showed up. They tried to steal his car and for no reason at all shot James. Michael only received the news a few days later, when his father's body was found in a river. It was a nightmare. The man who had always been by his side through all his victories had been taken from him in the cruelest way possible. Jordan was devastated. He couldn't understand how something like this could have happened. And suddenly basketball lost its meaning for him. The shocking decision: retirement from the NBA. On October 6, 1993, just 3 months after winning his third title, Jordan held a press conference. The whole world was watching. Then, with a dejected look on his face, he said the words no one expected to hear. "I've lost the desire to play basketball. I'm retiring." The NBA was in shock. How could the best player on the planet be leaving the game at the height of his career? But for Jordan, it no longer made sense to play without his father there to watch. He left the NBA. He left everything. And he did something no one could have imagined. He decided to follow the dream his father had always had for him: play baseball. Yes, Michael Jordan traded the court for the gridiron. But could he really shine in another sport? If you think this was the craziest decision of Jordan's career, wait until you see what happened when he put on a baseball uniform. The return with the iconic "I'm back" phrase, 1995. The return of the king. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world, simply disappeared from the court. He was away from the NBA wearing a completely different uniform trying to play baseball. But here comes the question: why did he do this? The baseball phase, a new challenge. After the death of his father and his retirement from basketball, Jordan decided to honor a long-held dream of James Jordan: to see his son play professional baseball. So he signed a contract with the Chicago White Sox, a Major League Baseball (MLB) team, and went to play in the minor leagues for the Birmingham Barons, the team's affiliate. But playing baseball was not like playing basketball. It was a completely different sport. Jordan had talent, but he was far from being a star. Even so, his effort was absurd. He trained non-stop, did everything right, but the truth was that he would never be an elite baseball player. But it was there, away from the courts, that the fire inside him began to reignite. He started to miss basketball. Missing the orange ball. Missing the big nights. Missing the adrenaline rush of being on the court. And then in early 1995 something changed. The call to come home. Jordan started visiting Chicago Bulls practices, just to see his old teammates. But once he got inside the gym, he couldn't resist. He grabbed a ball, took a few shots, and that was it. Basketball was still in him. Rumors started to spread. Could Michael Jordan be thinking about coming back? The press was talking about nothing else. Fans were begging for his return. And NBA players were praying that it wouldn't happen, because they knew what would happen if he did. So, on March 18, 1995, Jordan decided to announce his return. But he didn't want to do anything too big, anything grand. He simply sent a fax with 2 words that changed the history of sports: "I'm back." The return to the court. The magic was back. On March 19, 1995, Michael Jordan wore the Chicago Bulls jersey again. The opponent? Indiana Pacers. The whole world was watching. This was the greatest comeback in the history of sports. Jordan was not 100% in shape yet, but his presence alone made the Bulls feared again. A few games later, against the New York Knicks, he showed that the real Michael Jordan was still there. He scored 55 points at the legendary Madison Square Garden. It was in this game that it became clear to everyone. He had not forgotten how to dominate basketball. But could he take the Bulls back to the top? If you think this comeback was incredible, wait until you see how he led Chicago to another three-peat and wrote a new chapter in basketball history. The second three-peat and the perfect season, 1996 to 1998. The supremacy of Michael Jordan. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan returned, but his legacy was not yet complete. He knew he needed something bigger. He needed to reclaim his throne. If his first stint in the NBA was incredible, his second would be even more historic. The 1995-96 season. The greatest team of all time. Jordan spent the summer training like never before. Now he was in the best shape physically, mentally and technically. But he wasn't alone. The Bulls made one of the best signings in history. Dennis Rodman, the rebounding king and one of the fiercest defenders in the game. With Jordan, Scottie Pippen and Rodman, the Chicago Bulls formed an unbeatable trio. The result? The Bulls began to run over everyone. Victory after victory, night after night. At the end of the regular season, the impossible happened. They won 72 games and lost only 10. It was the best record in NBA history up to that point. In the playoffs, they simply destroyed their opponents and reached the NBA Finals against the Seattle Supersonics. Jordan dominated the series, and on Father's Day 1996, he lifted his fourth NBA title. It was an emotional moment because this was the first finals without his father watching. Jordan cried in the locker room holding the trophy. He was back on top. But it wasn't over yet. The 1996-97 season. The fever game and the fifth title. The following year, the Bulls continued unstoppable. Jordan was increasingly dominant and led the team to another finals, this time against the Utah Jazz of Karl Malone and John Stockton. The most legendary moment of those finals came in Game 5, known as the flu game. The night before the game, Jordan fell ill. He had a high fever, was dehydrated and felt dizzy. Many said it was food poisoning. Others said it was extreme exhaustion. The doctors said he wouldn't be able to play. But he did. And he didn't just play. He scored 38 points and led the Bulls to victory. In Pippen's arms, Jordan nearly passed out at the end of the game. It was one of the most epic moments in sports history. A few days later, he closed out the series and won his fifth ring. But he wanted one more. The 1997-98 season, the last dance and the final shot. The final year of the Bulls' second three-peat was full of tension. The team was about to disband. Coach Phil Jackson already knew it would be his last season, and Jordan felt that this could be the end of the Bulls' era. But if it was going to end, it would be in style. In the 1998 finals, the Bulls faced the Utah Jazz again. It was a very tough series, but in Game 6 in Utah, Jordan made history once again. With less than 10 seconds left, he stole the ball from Karl Malone, advanced to the front court, held possession, fooled Brian Russell, and he went up for the final shot. The ball flew through the air, the world held its breath, and it fell cleanly into the basket. The Bulls were champions again. Michael Jordan lifted his sixth NBA trophy and was named Finals MVP for the sixth time. And like a perfect movie, this was the last scene of his career with the Bulls. He had won 2 three-peat championships, 6 titles, countless awards, and the absolute respect of the basketball world. But was this really going to be his farewell? Do you think this was the last time we saw Jordan on the court? Wait until you see what happened when he decided to come back. Again. The last shot and the farewell of the Bulls, 1998. The end of a dynasty. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan was at the top of his game, at the absolute top of the basketball world. He had won 6 NBA titles, defeated all his rivals, and become a living legend. But something was wrong. Even after another brilliant season, the Chicago Bulls were in crisis behind the scenes. The team was about to fall apart. Coach Phil Jackson already knew it would be his last season. Scottie Pippen was unhappy and wanted out. Dennis Rodman wouldn't stay either. And the team's general manager, Jerry Krause, was determined to rebuild the team from scratch. Jordan knew this was the end of an era. But if this was the end, he wanted to end it the right way. The 1998 NBA Finals. The last dance. In the playoffs, Jordan and the Bulls advanced once again to the NBA Finals, facing the Utah Jazz of Karl Malone and John Stockton, one of the strongest teams in the league. The series was very tough, but it all came down to Game 6 in Utah. The game was tense. The Bulls were losing 86-85. With less than 20 seconds left, Jordan did something brilliant. He stole the ball from Karl Malone, ran to the offense and stopped at midcourt. He held the ball. Time seemed to slow down. It was as if the whole world was waiting for that moment. He dribbled past Brian Russell, pulled to the right, and he went up for the final shot. The ball sailed through the air. Silence filled the gym. Then it fell clean into the basket. Chicago Bulls 87-86 Utah Jazz. The immortal moment. Jordan stood there for a second with his hand in the air. That was his last shot for the Bulls. The Utah Jazz had one last chance but missed the shot. The game was over. The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship. And it's their second three-peat. Jordan ended his Bulls career in the most epic way possible. He became a 6-time NBA champion, was named Finals MVP for the 6th time, and ended his career in Chicago with the most iconic shot in basketball history. After the season, as expected, the Bulls team completely disbanded. And then, on January 13, 1999, Michael Jordan announced his second retirement from basketball. This time it seemed like it was over. He had conquered everything. But was this really his last dance? If you think this was the last time we saw Jordan on the court, wait until you see what happened when he made an unexpected decision. The unexpected return with the Washington Wizards, 2001 to 2003. The last journey. Now imagine this. Michael Jordan was already retired for the second time. He owned an NBA franchise, was living his life off the court, and it seemed like his basketball story was over. But then the impossible happened. In 2001, Jordan began to miss the competition. He watched the games and knew he could still play. He could still win. And so, on September 25, 2001, he shocked the world by announcing, "I'm coming back to play for the Washington Wizards." Yes, at age 38, Jordan returned to the NBA. The new mission, Washington Wizards. This time he wasn't coming back to dominate the league. His goal was to help a weak team, bring experience, and raise the level of the players around him. Even older, Jordan was still a monster. In the 2001 to 2002 season, he had great performances, including a 51-point game against the Charlotte Hornets. But the Wizards team wasn't strong enough, and to make matters worse, Jordan suffered a knee injury. Even so, he returned for one more season in 2002 to 2003 at the age of 40. And that was the year that we saw the final goodbye. The last game of his career, 2003. The end of an era. The world knew that this would be Jordan's last season. In every arena where he played, he was cheered by the fans. On April 16, 2003, against the Philadelphia 76ers, Michael Jordan played his last game in the NBA. With just a few minutes left in the game, the coach took him off the court, and the entire arena stood up to applaud. "Thank you, MJ." And with that, the greatest player of all time said goodbye to the court. But his impact never faded. The enduring legacy of Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was not just a player. He was a revolutionary. He brought a level of competitiveness never seen before. He made the NBA a global phenomenon. He inspired millions of players and fans around the world. Even off the court, he still dominates the game. His brand, Air Jordan, remains a symbol of greatness. His impact can be seen in players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and many others who followed in his footsteps. Michael Jordan was not just an athlete. He was, and will always be, a legend. What now? If you like this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here we tell the greatest stories in sports, with emotion, details, and unforgettable moments. Like, share with your friends, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. And tell me in the comments, what was the most epic moment of Michael Jordan's career for you? See you in the next video.